नमस्कार मेरा सम्पूर्ण फेसबुक युट्युब इन्स्टाग्राम हेरेर बस्ने मित्रहरू तपाईँलाई आज म एउटा सधैँ चाहिँ विशेष जानकारी लिएर आइरहेको छु। आजको जानकारी भनेको यो अहिलेको जल्दो बल्दो अवस्था जहाँ कि आइस इमिग्रेसन एन्ड कस्टम इन्फोर्समेन्टले विभिन्न ठाउँमा हाम्रा दाजुभाइहरूलाई गिरफ्तार गरेको, कतिजनालाई यहाँबाट पक्रेर भुटान पठाइरहेको अवस्था छ। गाउँघरमा पनि विभिन्न किसिमका प्रश्नहरू आइरहेका छन्। म नागरिक हुँ के मलाई पनि पक्रिन्छ, अथवा मेरो छोरालाई केही कारणले पक्रेर लैगयो भने मेरो सम्पत्ति के हुन्छ त, मेरा नाति नातिनाको समस्या के हुन्छ भन्ने यस्ता खालका प्रश्नहरू हाम्रा घरमा हर दिन आइरहेका अवस्था छ। अहिले नभन्दै कतिजना नागरिक भएका साथीहरूलाई पनि अप्ठ्यारामा कठघरामा उभ्याइराखेको वर्तमान राष्ट्रपतिका नियमले गर्दाखेरि, भनेदेखि कतिजना साथीहरूलाई पित्थामा धेरै डर लागिरहेको, जुन चाहिँ डराउनु नपर्ने अवस्था पनि छन्। त्यसका बावजुद हाम्रा अधिकार पनि छन् यो देशमा। कस्ता कस्ता अधिकार तपाईँ र ममा छन्? यदि तपाईँ र मेरो नागरिक छैन भने हाम्रा अधिकार के हुन्? मेरो नागरिक छ भने मेरा अधिकार के हुन्? भने यस्ता विविध प्रश्नहरूको जवाब कति त हामीले पायौँ होला, कति हामीले पाएका छैनौँ होला। यही जवाब खोज्ने तर्खरमा मसँग आज हुनुहुन्छ निकोल। उहाँ इमिग्रेसन एसियन ल ककसमा काम गर्नुहुन्छ। उहाँ एटर्नी हुनुहुन्छ र उहाँलाई मैले आज यो कार्यक्रममा बोलाएको छु र उहाँसँग बसेर धेरैवटा प्रश्नको उत्तर पनि गरिनेछ। आज भलाकुसारी भन्दा पनि तपाईँ प्रश्न सोध्नुहोला र ती प्रश्नको जवाब आज सही व्यक्तिबाट माग्न कोसिस गर्नेछौँ। र सधैँ चाहिँ तपाईँलाई म आज फेरि विशेष अनुरोध गर्दछु, तपाईँहरूले कृपया सेयर गरिदिनु होला, लाइक गरिदिनु होला र कमेन्ट गरिदिनु होला। र कतिजना बुवा आमाले मलाई आज पनि हिजो पनि धेरैले फोन गरेर सोध्नु भएको थियो, भाइ तपाईँको युट्युब भन्ने त मैले जानिनँ, कसरी गर्नुपर्छ भन्नुभएको थियो। मसिना भाइ बहिनीहरू हुनुहुन्छ तपाईँ घरमा कोही हेर्दै गरेको भने तपाईँले बुवा आमालाई सहयोग गरिदिनु होला र युट्युबमा साइन अप गर्न सघाइदिनु होला र फेसबुकमा फलो गरिदिनु होला। कारण पनि यस्ता कतिवटा जानकारीहरू हामीलाई धेरै आवश्यक पर्ने हुन्छन्, तर ती आवश्यक पर्ने जानकारीहरू हामीले यो नजानेकाले गर्दाखेरि तपाईँकोमा नपुग्न सक्छ। र त्यति भन्दै म आजका पाहुनालाई बोलाउन चाहन्छु। उहाँको नाम निकोल हो। उहाँ हामी जस्तै आप्रवासीको छोरी हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँ जापानिज र चाइनिज अमेरिकनको उहाँको पुरै हेरिटेज उहाँदेखि आउनुभएको, पहिले उहाँको त 4th जेनेरेसन आयो भने चौथो पुस्ता यहाँ उहाँ बस्दै हुनुहुन्छ र उहाँलाई म अगाडि स्क्रिनमा बोलाउँछु। हस् त। Namaste, Nicole.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for coming. So I spoke about what we are going to do today. In fact, today's topic I put, can a citizen really be detained by ICE? That's the topic I put today. So that's how we'll be, what we'll be discussing today. But let me tell you how we will be doing. A lot of my audience will be speaking both English and Nepali. So I'll be asking you the questions in English, and definitely I'm expecting answers in English only. And you don't need to shorten your answer, just go as it is, and I will briefly summarize. I'll not interpret word by word because that is not possible. I'm not an expert in interpreter. So please continue doing, finish your thought, and afterwards I'll summarize your point. I have a pen and paper ready to summarize the thoughts. So thank you for finding the time, and it's so important that you are coming this crucial time. There's so many questions. I know there are so many questions will be from the audience. I have around 10 questions prepared for you. So other than that, we'll be asking questions from the audience also. So let me tell briefly this in Nepali, then I'll ask you the first question. र मैले निकोलजीलाई भने आज कार्यक्रममा आइदिनु भयो, उहाँलाई विशेष धन्यवाद। यो अहिले गाउँघरमा बहुत धेरै प्रश्नहरू छन्, के हुन्छ कसो हुन्छ, मलाई के हुन्छ भन्ने धेरै क्वेसन छन्। यस्ता क्वेसनका जवाब दिनलाई सही व्यक्तिलाई हामीले उहाँ हुनुहुन्छ र उहाँ आज आउनुभएको छ, त्यसका लागि उहाँलाई धेरै धन्यवाद दिँदै म उहाँलाई अब अङ्ग्रेजीमा प्रश्न सोध्छु, उहाँले अङ्ग्रेजीमा जवाब दिनुहुन्छ र तपाईँ कसैका केही प्रश्न छन् भने कृपया प्रश्न राख्नुहोला, ती प्रश्नको जवाब पनि हामी खोज्न कोसिस गर्नेछौँ। So thank you. Now my first question, do you want to say anything else before we start?
I just wanted to say thanks so much for having us on. Thanks so much for bringing this information to the community. I'm really honored to be here. And I think one kind of disclaimer that I wanted to say at the beginning before I answer any questions is that I'm going to be responding with general information that is not legal advice. And so it's really important to talk to an attorney for guidance on your specific situation to ensure your rights are protected, because everyone's is a little different.
Thank you. र उहाँले भन्नुहुन्छ, उहाँले जो जवाब दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ त्यो दिएको जवाब चाहिँ समग्रमा हुन्छ। यसको कुनै कसैको एउटा सिधा क्वेसन छ तपाईँको केसको लागि भने त्यसको लागि तपाईँले आफ्नो एटर्नीसँग कुराकानी गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। र साथसाथै उहाँले जो यहाँ दिएको सल्लाहलाई चाहिँ तपाईँलाई कानुनी सल्लाह नमान्नु होला, यो जेनरल आइडियाका लागि यस्तो हुँदो रहेछ भन्ने कुरा बुझ्नु होला भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ उहाँले पहिल्यै जानकारी गराउन चाहँदै हुनुहुन्छ। So, right, Nicole, my first question is, so many people are asking me this question today, these days, even today itself. Like, I just came from an event, and in that event, there was a discussion. Those were well-educated people were there, and one individual just came to me on a side and asked me, can you tell me, will I be deported? He is a naturalized US citizen. He is in his late 40s. He's well-educated. He's college-educated, in fact, not only just an educated, college-educated person. And he was concerned, and he asked me that question. And I answered him, but the very reason that he has to ask me that question made me concerned. So can you tell me, what do you think? Let me ask this question in Nepali as well, so everybody understand. मैले उहाँलाई प्रश्न सोधेको छु, अमेरिकी नागरिकलाई आइसले गिरफ्तार गर्न सक्छ, डिटेन्ड मिन्स पक्रिन सक्छ भन्ने क्वेसन मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको छु। मेरो आजकै मात्रै क्वेसन हो यो। आज म अलिकति अगाडिकै कार्यक्रममा थिएँ दिउँसोतिर, मलाई एकजना 45-50 वर्षको वयस्क साथीले भन्नुभयो, कलेज धेरै राम्रो पढ्नु भएको व्यक्तिले भन्नुभयो, मलाई फर्काउँछ, यहाँको सरकारले मलाई पनि भुटान फर्काउँछ भाइ आज भन्नुभयो। मलाई फर्काउँछ कि फर्काउँदैन, फर्काउँछ कि मलाई जवाब दिनुहोस् भनेर उहाँलाई सोद्धाखेरि मैले उहाँलाई मेरो उत्तर त दिएँ, तर त्यो प्रश्न सोध्ने अवस्थामा पुग्नु नै भयङ्करै चिन्ताजनक विषय हो। तपाईँ के भन्नुहुन्छ भनेर मैले उहाँलाई यो प्रश्न राखेको छु। ल हजुरको प्रश्न सोध्नु। Go ahead, please.
It is really heartbreaking that so many people are worried when they are, U.S. citizens. I mean, no one should be deported and separated from their families, but for sure, a U.S. citizen cannot be lawfully detained by immigration or deported, because federal immigration law only allows for the arrest, detention, and deportation of non-citizens. Now, there's a couple of things that people might want to know. First, it is possible that ICE can detain a U.S. citizen if they first go through a process of taking away that person's citizenship, so they're no longer a citizen. And that process is called denaturalization. It only applies to U.S. citizens who are born outside of the United States and become citizens later in life. So if you were born in the United States, this process does not apply to you at all. Did you want me to go into more detail about denaturalization?
Or... All right, thank you. Let me tell this thing first. उहाँ भन्नुहुन्छ यो डिटेन्स भने आइसले गिरफ्तार गर्ने भनेको खासमा आइसले कसैलाई पनि गिरफ्तार गर्नु नहुने हो, तर कानुनतः कोही पनि अमेरिकी नागरिक छ भने त्यो मान्छेलाई आइसले कहिले पनि डिटेन्सन गर्न सक्दैन अथवा पाउँदैन। एउटा सर्त छ, जो बाहिरबाट आएको आप्रवासी जस्तो हामी छौं, नेचुरलाइज भएर सिटिजन भएको छ भने त्यो मान्छेलाई आइसले पक्रिनका लागि पहिले डिनेचुरलाइजेसन गर्नुपर्छ अथवा उसको नागरिकता खोसिनुपर्छ। अनि त्यो नागरिकता खोसिसके पछाडी मात्रै उसलाई पक्रिन सक्छ अथवा उसलाई गिरफ्तार गर्न सक्छ। तर जो मान्छे यही देशमा जन्मेर नागरिक भएको छ भने तिनीहरुलाई आइसले गिरफ्तार गर्ने कुरा कतै पनि आउँदैन। अब डिनेचुरलाइजेसन भनेको के हो भन्ने कुरामा उहाँले कुरा गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ। Please go ahead.
So I don't want to scare you by this discussion of denaturalization. Even though there have been efforts to sort of increase the use of this process since the first Trump administration, there are actually very, very few citizens whose citizenship has been taken away, and there are very limited grounds for doing so, mainly related to obtaining citizenship unlawfully in the first place. And that's a very complicated analysis, and you should definitely talk to an attorney if you're concerned about this happening to you. But again, it happens to very few people. There are very few grounds for doing it. And before they can do it, they have to go through a long process that starts with getting served or delivered a complaint from the Department of Justice. And the only one who can take away your naturalized citizenship is a federal court. So I don't want to scare you with this talk of denaturalization. It's very unlikely to apply to almost everyone.
थ्याङ्क यू। उहाँले भन्नुहुन्छ डिनेचुरलाइजेसन अथवा नागरिकता खोसिने भन्ने प्रक्रिया जो हो, यो प्रक्रियामा म कुरा गरेर तपाईँलाई डर देखाउन चाहन्न। हुँदै नहुने होइन, हुन चाहिँ हुन्छ, तर हुने नहुने प्रक्रिया बहुतै अप्ठ्यारो छ, साह्रो छ। त्यसकारण धेरैभन्दा धेरै कम्ती मान्छेको मात्रै अहिलेसम्म भएको छ। पहिलो पालिको ट्रम्पको कार्यकालमा धेरै कम्ती मान्छेलाई भएको छ, बहुत धेरै हल्लागुल्ला भएको भए तापनि कम्ती मान्छेको भएको छ। र यो प्रक्रियाका लागि म धेरै तपाईँलाई कुरा गरेर डर देखाउन म चाहन्न भन्नुहुन्छ। Alright, thank you.
Can I add one more
Please
to this
go ahead.
question? So even though it's not lawful for ICE to detain a US citizen or to deport them, as you may have heard in the news, there have been cases of mistaken detention or deportation that are unlawful. There are many things that have been happening that are unlawful recently in this country. So if you or a loved one who is a US citizen is detained unlawfully, you should immediately contact an attorney. And to prevent any miscommunication, if you are stopped by immigration agents, you might want to carry copies of documents that demonstrate your citizenship status, such as a copy of your US passport or birth certificate or certificate of naturalization. So that's just some advice for folks out there who are concerned about this. Again, it's very unlikely, but it doesn't hurt to have a copy of some of that paperwork just in case, so that you won't actually, go further in the process of detention if someone picks you up mistakenly.
Thank you. That's so important. उहाँले भन्नुहुन्छ, म अघि हामीले भने जस्तै अमेरिकी नागरिकलाई आइस भन्ने जो यहाँको इन्फोर्समेन्ट एजेन्सी छ उनले गिरफ्तार गर्ने प्रश्न आउँदैन। तर अमेरिकामा अहिलेको अवस्थामा कतिवटा कुरा कानुनका विपरीत पनि भइरहेका छन्। त्यस कारणले अगर तपाईँ नागरिक हुनुहुन्छ भने तपाईँले आफ्नो नेचुरलाइजेसन सर्टिफिकेटको फोटोकपी बनाउने, अरू पनि कुनै कागजपत्र छन् तपाईँका विशेष कागजपत्र, ती कागजपत्रको फोटोकपी बनाउने र आफू साथमा राख्ने। त्यसो भए पछाडि के हुन्छ भने तपाईँलाई कुनै दिन केही केरकार गरिगयो खण्डमा तपाईँलाई कागजपत्र देखाउनु भयो भने त्यो झमेलामा फसिराख्नु पर्दैन। त्यसकारण नपर्ने हो, तरै पनि ती कागजपत्र बोकेर गइयो भने हामीलाई ठिक हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा उहाँले सल्लाह दिँदै हुनुहुन्छ। Thank you. So, Nicole, I have a few questions here in the comment. Let me read those questions and I'll go to the next question. र तपाईँ जो हेर्ने साथीहरू हुनुहुन्छ तपाईँ सबैलाई म यो अनुरोध गर्छु, फेरि प्लिज यसलाई सेयर गरिदिनु होला है त, धेरैभन्दा धेरै साथीहरूमा पुगोस्। So one of the question here is Arjun Pradhan is asking, Greeting Nicole, recently Trump administration deported our Bhutanese brothers to Bhutan, but unfortunately Bhutan did not accept them and sent back to refugee camp. 4 deportees again settled down in camp, but others are disappeared. How do we advocate to government on these issues? Any idea or an experience that you want to share, please?
Yes, I'm aware of this situation, and I think it's just such a terrible human rights issue that people, that your Bhutanese brothers have been, and sisters perhaps, have been deported to a country that has treated them so poorly in the past, and that they didn't accept them and then sent them back to a refugee camp. Those are human rights issues. And in terms of like what you can do, it's unfortunately quite hard to use legal tools to bring people back once they have been deported. But I recommend that you contact your members of Congress and elected officials and really tell them about this situation, ask them to do an inquiry into what happened to these individuals. That's something that Congress can do. They can open up inquiries into what has happened, what the government has done. So I would encourage you to do that and continue sort of like amplifying these stories and these voices so that elected officials will feel like they're accountable to the community to like find these people and do what they can to support them and bring them back. And the other thing I would just say is that there are a lot of organizations that support folks who have been deported in other countries. So, I suggest connecting with them, and also connecting with international human rights organizations who are watching this issue as well and are interested in doing something to address it.
Thank you. Let me interpret that. अर्जुनजी अर्जुन भाइ तपाईँलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद। उहाँले सोधेको प्रश्न थियो कतिजना हाम्रा साथी भाइहरूलाई अहिले अमेरिकाले ट्रम्पले भुटान फर्कायो, भुटानले तत्काल खेदाएर भारतमा आए, भारतमा आएर कतिजना नेपालमा आइसके, 4जना नेपालमा हुनुहुन्छ, रहेका अरू हराइराख्नु भएको छ। यो अवस्थामा के गर्ने त, हाम्रो के चाहिँ गर्न सकिन्छ यहाँबाट भन्ने प्रश्न उहाँले उठाउनु भएको थियो। त्यसको जवाब भन्नुहुन्छ उहाँ, जब यो देशबाट निकालिसके पछाडि कानुनी रूपमा हामीले फर्काएर ल्याउन सक्ने भन्ने कुरा धेरै कम्ती हुन्छ, धेरै कम्ती मात्रै हामीले गर्न सकिने केही कुरा हुन्छ निकालिसके पछाडि भने। तर अब हामीले गर्ने भनेको तपाईँको जुन स्टेटमा तपाईँ बस्नुहुन्छ त्यहाँको उहाँ केन्द्रीय युएस कङ्ग्रेस, युएस सेनेटमा फोन गर्ने, उनीहरूसँग जान भेट्ने, आफ्नो मुद्दा राख्ने एउटा कुरा भयो भने, अर्को अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय मानव अधिकार संस्थासँग कुराकानी गरिराख्ने, यो इस्युलाई ठुलो बनाउने, इस्युलाई बात गरिराख्ने र यो चिन्ताको विषय चाहिँ उठाइराखिसके पछाडि धेरैवटा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय सङ्घ संस्थाले पनि हेरिरहेका हुन्छन्। त्यो कुरामा वकालत गर्नका लागि केही कुरा हुन्छ। साथसाथै काङ्ग्रेसले पनि कुनै कानुन नयाँ ल्याएर त्यसमा परिवर्तन गर्न सक्ने सम्भावना हुन्छ। त्यसका लागि हामीले हर दिन कुरा गरिराख्नुपर्ने हुन्छ भनेर भन्नुहुन्छ। Thank you, Nicole. Now let me go to the next question that I have prepared. What should you do if your loved one is detained by ICE? What happens to their property or to their children? Let me explain this a little bit so that other people in the audience also understand. There are many cases. Let me talk example. Typical in one of the states. I don't want to be very specific. So one state in Kentucky, there was one individual who was working, who had some issues in the past, was working. He was detained by ICE, and family but did not know for maybe a week or so because they have no clue what happened to him because they never informed anybody. Later on, they found that their loved one was in ICE detention. And by the time they knew, it was only 7 days, and I came to know, and I think we're involved, many of us are involved in resolving that case. So at that time, one of the biggest question was, the house was in the name of the person who was detained. They had 2 cars. There was the name of the person who was detained. Their children they had no clue what to do with the children. And all those things were messed. Everything was by that particular individual who was, in fact, breadwinner of the family. So what to do in that situation? That is the question.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to tell this in Nepali also.
Sure.
मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको थिएँ, सरी मैले अङ्ग्रेजीमा भने नेपालीमा, उहाँलाई मैले सोधेको थिएँ कोही हाम्रो घरको भाइलाई बहिनीलाई कसैलाई आइस ल्याएर पक्रेर लग्यो भने त्यो घरको सम्पत्तिले के गर्ने? एकजना केन्टकीमा भएको कथा भने, मैले एकजना भाइ हुनुहुँदो रहेछ, भाइलाई आइसले पक्रेर लगेछ, उहाँको घर तिनै भाइको नाममा रहेछ, 2टा गाडी उनकै नाममा रहेछन्, उनीहरूका 3जना छोराछोरी, ती नानीहरूको बेहाल। यस्तो अवस्था भयो भने के गर्ने? त्यो हालतमा हामीले कसरी बस्ने, त के उपाय छन् भनेर मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको छु र उहाँले जवाब गरिदिनुहुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू, प्लिज गो अहेड।
Yeah, so it's such a terrible situation when someone is detained, and so scary when you can't find them. So there's a couple of things I'm going to go through, and I'll pause after each one so you can interpret. So the first and probably most important thing is to find your loved one. And there is an online detainee locator. I can't quite figure out how to put stuff in the chat, but like later maybe I can do that, like the website.
Yeah, after that.
I'm sorry?
After we are done, we can
afterwards. Okay. So I can put that in. So anyways, you can start with the ICE online detainee locator, but it's much easier to find your loved one if you have their A number. So for anyone who is listening who is not a U.S. citizen and has gone through some immigration proceedings or who have loved ones who have, please, find your A number and share it with all of your family, because that will make it much easier for them to find you if for whatever reason you are picked up. If you don't have that, then you can enter the first and last name and country of birth, but it's harder. And then you can also contact the local field office. I know you have listeners from all over the country, but you're in Ohio, right? And the closest ice field office for Ohio residents actually is in Detroit. So anyway, you need to figure that out. And then there's some other tips to find your loved one, and I can share that resource later. I'm going to pause there before I go to the next part.
थ्याङ्क यू। पहिलो कुरा चाहिँ उहाँले भन्नुहुन्छ तपाईँ कसैलाई हाम्रो घरको भाइहरूलाई, बहिनीहरूलाई पक्रिएको खण्डमा हामीले अनलाइन डिटेनी लोकेटर भन्ने एउटा वेबसाइट छ। त्यो वेबसाइट अहिले हामी भरे यहाँ लगाउँछौँ, अथवा तपाईँ कोही हेर्ने साथीहरू तपाईँलाई थाहा छ भने प्लिज यहाँ तपाईँलाई कमेन्टमा लगाइदिनु होला। त्यहाँ गएर चाहिँ ए नम्बर हुन्छ, जति बेला हामी उहाँबाट आउँदा ए नम्बर दिन्थ्यो एउटा I-94 को पछाडि, त्यो ए नम्बर लगाइसकेपछि कहाँ छ भन्ने कुरा पत्ता लाग्छ। र यस्तो तपाईँलाई कुनै समस्या परेको छ र आइसले पक्रेर लान्छ भन्ने तपाईँलाई चिन्ता भइरहेको छ भने कृपया घरका सबै मान्छेसँग ए नम्बर चाहिँ सेयर गर्नुहोला। अनि ए नम्बर लगाइसके पछाडि चाहिँ कहाँ लगेको छ भनेर पत्ता लगाउन सजिलो हुन्छ र भेटाउन सकिन्छ। अरू पनि उपायहरू छन्, फर्स्ट नेम, लास्ट नेम, कन्ट्री अफ ओरिजिन लाएर। ती अरू भनेका धेरै अप्ठ्यारा हुन्छन्, तर ए नम्बरबाट खोज्ने सबैभन्दा सजिलो प्रक्रिया भएकाले गर्दाखेरि तपाईँको आफ्नो ए नम्बर चाहिँ पक्का सबै परिवारसँग बाँडेर बाँडिराख्नु होला। त्यसले भरे कहाँ छ भन्ने कुरा पत्ता लाग्न सजिलो हुन्छ भन्नुहुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू, प्लिज गो अहेड।
So first you got to find them, and then second, it's really important to find an attorney for them if they're detained. So you may need to be really persistent and creative because there's a lot of need right now for immigration attorneys and not enough of them. It sounds like you are all very persistent with the case you're talking about, and hopefully we're able to find them some attorneys. But in terms of tips for finding attorneys, depending on your situation, you can find for your low-cost legal providers that provide services in detention facilities. It's called, if you Google, like the National Immigration Legal Services Directory. And there's some other sort of websites you can go to find free and low-cost attorneys. You can also find private immigration attorneys through the American Immigration Lawyers Association directory. So you can look there. But I just want to give you a couple of tips when you're looking for an attorney, because it's common for, or maybe not common, but it's possible that people pretend like they're an attorney, an immigration attorney who can help you and take your money and don't actually help you. So I want to make sure none of your listeners sort of fall prey to that. So just make sure that the person that you're reaching out to is either an attorney or an accredited DOJ accredited representative. You can usually look them up on the state bar. And then try to vet the attorney with local nonprofit organizations to make sure that they actually do good work. And one sort of like red flag is if they suggest that you could take out a loan with them to pay for legal services. You should also be wary of anyone who promises you that they can win your case or your loved one's case or agrees to do something in your case before reviewing any of your documents. So all of those things are red flags. So I'll pause there.
Thank you. I don't know how much I remember that. उहाँलाई मैले सोधेको थिएँ त्यस्तो अवस्थामा के गर्ने, पहिलो ए नम्बर पत्ता लगाउने, सेकेन्डमा भनेको चाहिँ सेकेन्डको कुरा महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा भेटाइसके पछाडि तपाईँले एटर्नी अथवा लयर खोज्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। लयर खोज्दा ध्यान दिनुपर्ने कुरा हामीले पहिलो कुरा चाहिँ लो कस्ट एटर्नी, नेसनल इमिग्रेसन लयर डाइरेक्टरी भनेर छ। त्यहाँनिरबाट लो कस्टको कम्ती पैसा लाग्ने एउटा सही तरिकाले लयर भेटाउने खोज्ने कुरा गऱ्यो भने अर्को धेरैवटा नेसनल लका पनि हुन्छन्, तिनीहरूलाई पनि हेर्नु पर्यो। तर लयर भेटाउँदाखेरि भनेको लोकल नन प्रफिटहरू जो हुन्छन्, जस्तो कोलम्बस लिगल सोसाइटी अफ कोलम्बस इज एन एक्जाम्पल, त्यस्ता खालका उनीहरूबाट गइयो भने सही तरिकाबाट जाइन्छ। होइन कुनै प्राइभेट एटर्नी पनि खोज्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। प्राइभेट एटर्नी खोज्दाखेरि ख्याल गर्नुपर्ने कुरा, कुनै कुनै एटर्नीले आएर भन्छन् तपाईँको मामला त म जिताइहाल्छु नि, तपाईँले चिन्तै मान्नु पर्दैन भन्ने कुरा गर्छन्। त्यस्तो मान्छे छ भने त्यसलाई रेड फ्ल्याग भइगयो, त्यसले त्यो कुरा चाहिँदो कुरा गरेन भन्ने कुरा भयो भने हामीले कसरी खोज्ने भन्दा डिओजे, डिपार्टमेन्ट अफ जस्टिसबाट एक्रेडिटेड यो मान्छे ठिक हो मान्छे भनेर लेखेको हुन्छ र खोज्ने तरिका हुन्छ। त्यो त्यसमा गएर हेरेर यो सही मान्छे हो कि होइन, गलत मान्छे सही मान्छे पत्ता लगाउनु पर्यो। अर्को हुन्छ कुनै एटर्नीले भन्छन् ठिक छ तेरो मामला म लडिदिन्छु, त तेरो नाममा लोन निकालेर त्यो लोनबाट लडेर तेरो मामला जिताइदिन्छु भन्यो भने ती मान्छेहरू फटा हुन्छ भने त्यो पनि जान्नु पर्यो। अथवा अर्को चाहिँ अर्को चाहिँ जिताइहाल्छु, अथवा अरू कतिवटा कुरा नचाहिँदा कुरा गरेको कुरा भेटाइयो भने चाहिँ हामीले ती मान्छेसँग रेड फ्ल्याग अथवा यिनीहरूले चाहिँ सही काम गर्दैनन् कि भन्ने शङ्का काट्नुपर्ने अवस्था आउन सक्छ भन्नुहुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू, प्लिज गो अहेड।
Okay, so you need to find your loved one, you need to help them find a lawyer, and then you need to know that it's your right to visit your detained loved one, and they also have a right to receive visits from their lawyer. And when you go visit them, there's some things that would be good to tell your loved one who's detained. So keep these things in mind in case you have a loved one who's detained. Make sure they do these things. And in the future, I hope this doesn't happen to any of you, but if in the future one of your loved ones is detained, you should try to remember these things and tell them. So first, it's really important if you're detained for the person who's detained, to tell everyone that they meet in detention, all the immigration agents, that they are afraid to return to Bhutan, to Nepal, to India, if this is true, right? Because it is this claim of fear of returning to a country that will help you to stay here, because there are laws that say you should not return someone to a country where they will be harmed. The second thing that you should do if you're detained is to ask for a bond hearing with an immigration judge, which basically means that they will let you out while they are considering your case more, if you can pay some money. So that's the second thing you should do. Ask for a bond hearing. The third thing you should do is that you should share information about your medical conditions, including if you're pregnant or if you have a serious illness. You should also share if you're the primary caregiver of kids who are US citizens or green card holders, because this can also help you. And then a couple of things you should not do when you're in detention is you should not sign any documents without talking to a lawyer.
Let, let me
Oh, I'm
let me
sorry.
finish what let me finish what we do, then I will come back to what we don't do. Okay.
Okay.
So मैले उहाँलाई भइसकेपछि तपाईँ अब आफ्ना जोही तपाईँको भाइ अथवा बहिनी काका भतिजा कसैलाई आइसले पक्रिराखेको छ भने पहिलो ए नम्बर, दोस्रो लयर भेटाउने, तेस्रोमा गएर गर्ने काम चाहिँ के हो भन्दाखेरि उनीहरू सबैजनाले जो हाम्रो अवस्थामा, हामी भुटानी अमेरिकनको अवस्थामा हामीलाई भुटान जाँदा हामीलाई डर छ, तपाईँलाई डर लाग्छ भुटानमा के गर्छ भुटानको राजाले भने जस्तो लाग्छ भने तपाईँले आफूलाई लागेको डरको कुरा बताउने तिनीहरूलाई, मलाई डर लाग्छ भनेर बताउने। जहाँ कि मलाई डर लाग्छ भुटान जाँदाखेरि, भुटानको राजाले मलाई मार्छ कि जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई, किन भुटानको राजा राक्षस हो हाम्रो लागि, त्यो राक्षस नै हो खासै नै पनि एउटा कुरा। भने दोस्रो कुरा चाहिँ बन्ड हियरिङ विथ द इमिग्रेसन जज। सो अरू दोस्रो कुरा हामीले मागे चाहिँ बन्ड हियरिङ भनेर धितो राखेर बाहिर निक्लिने भन्ने कुराको लागि हाम्रो दोस्रो काम गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। र तेस्रो काम, अगर तपाईँ कसैलाई मेडिकल कन्डिसनको बारेमा, कसैलाई अप्ठ्यारो खालको रोग लागेको छ, कोही गर्भवती हुनुहुन्छ अथवा कसैलाई चाहिँ कुनै दबाई यहाँ मात्रै पाउने नपाउने खालका यस्ता विभिन्न किसिमका समस्या छन् हेल्थ रिलेटेड भने ती कुराहरू पनि गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। र अनि आस्क फर एनी डकुमेन्ट्स, वाट इज दिस आस्क फर एनी डकुमेन्ट्स, क्यान यु एक्सप्लेन द्याट?
Oh, so yes, so these are things to not do. So don't sign any documents without first talking to a lawyer, and definitely don't sign anything that you don't understand. If you don't have a lawyer, you should at least ask that it be read in your own language, that you understand things the best, because you may accidentally sign away your rights to talk to a lawyer or a judge. You might sign away your ability to return to the US in the future if you are deported, or to apply for legal status. So it's really important not to sign away these rights. And you also don't want to lie or give false information, I guess kind of obviously, but it will hurt your case down the line.
अर्को कुरा ख्याल गर्नुपर्ने, हामी सबैले ख्याल गर्नुपर्ने, यो स्पेसली म भुटानी अमेरिकनहरूलाई भन्न चाहन्छु, म जान्दिनँ भन्ने कुरा हाम्रो धेरैको हुन्छ र मैले तपाईँलाई भनेको यो कुरा चाहिँ कुनै पनि कागजपत्रमा सही गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ मजाले बुझ्नुपर्ने भयो। अथवा आफूसँग तपाईँसँग लयर छैन, एटर्नी छैन भने कृपया त्यो कागजमा सही नगर्नु होला, बिल्कुल सही नगर्नु होला, बुझेर मात्रै सही गर्नु होला। अथवा लयर पाइएन भने पनि आफ्नो भाषामा मलाई दे भने तपाईँले मजाले त्यो कागजमा बुझेर त्यसपछि मात्रै साइन गर्नु होला। कारण नबुझिकन साइन गर्यो भने तपाईँले केमा साइन गर्नुहुन्छ, फर्केर आउन नपाउनेमा साइन गरेको छ कि मेरो अधिकार, म सुनिश्चित भएको अधिकार म आज वेभ गर्छु त म त्यो अधिकारलाई प्रयोग गर्दिनँ भन्नुहुन्छ कि त्यो नजानिकन सही गरियो भने अप्ठ्यारा भड्काउलामा पर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू।
So now I'll address your question about the childcare.
No, sorry, one more, I forget to tell. अर्को कुरा चाहिँ के भने नढाँट्नु होला, बिल्कुल डोन्ट टेल लाई भन्नुभएको छ। ढाँट्न चाहिँ नढाँट्नु हामीले जानेको कुरा, किन ढाँट्यो भने चाहिँ फेरि अप्ठ्यारामा पर्न सकिन्छ, किनभने त्यो कुरा अर्कोमा ढाँटेको मुद्दा लाग्न सक्छ र ढाँट्न चाहिँ नढाँट्नु होला भन्नुहुन्छ। प्लिज गो अहेड नेक्स्ट।
So I know one of the issues that arose in the situation that you talked about at the beginning of this question is what to do with the kids. So if your loved one is a primary caregiver for children, they should make alternative arrangements for their kids, but the options will differ depending on the state because every state law is different around this issue. So, for example, in Ohio, this can be done through what's called a limited power of attorney that you fill out. But that route is not even possible in California, where I live. You couldn't do that. In Pennsylvania, you can do a caregiver designation or do a formal custody agreement. But because family law varies so widely by state, it's important to talk to an attorney about your specific situation under your state specific laws. So, one thing to keep in mind is if you are at risk of detention or deportation because you have a final order of removal, you should start this process now while you're still in the community. It will be much easier to figure out these things, to sign all of that paperwork now.
थ्याङ्क यू। अर्को कुरा थियो मैले अघि उहाँलाई सोधिरहेको थिएँ जुन चाहिँ नानीहरू छन् घरमा, मसिना नानीहरू छन् घरमा भने ती नानीहरूको के हुन्छ त हालत अब त्यो मलाई चाहिँ यहाँबाट पक्रेर भुटान लगाऊ भने अथवा मलाई यहाँबाट बाहिर लगाऊ भने भन्ने कुराको क्वेसनको कुरामा चाहिँ प्रत्येक स्टेटका आफ्ना आफ्ना नियम छन् र आफ्नो स्टेटको नियम मुताबिक काम गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। ओहायोमा हुनुहुन्छ भने लिमिटेड पावर अफ एटर्नी भनेर हुन्छ, त्यसमा साइन गरेको हुनुपर्छ। अब पेन्सिल्भेनिया भने केयर गिभर डेजिग्नेसन र फर्मल कस्टडी भन्ने एग्रिमेन्टमा साइन गर्दाखेरि हुन्छ भने क्यालिफोर्नियामा ती कुनै पनि काम लाग्ने त्यो अर्कै खालको नियम छ भन्नुहुँदैछ। र तर के कुरा थियो भने यी कुरा सबै तपाईँलाई फाइनल अर्डर डिपोर्टेसनको फाइनल अर्डर छ भने तपाईँ देशमा हुँदाहुँदै अगाडि नै कागजपत्रमा सबै थोक सही गर्ने काम गर्नु भने धेरै सजिलो हुन्छ, जहाँ कि तपाईँले आफै गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ। ती कुराको भरे तपाईँलाई उहाँ लगिसकेपछि भने साह्रो पर्छ र त्योभन्दा सबैभन्दा पहिली त्यस्तो हुन आँटेको छ भने अगाडि नै तयारी गरेको राम्रो हो भन्ने कुरा गर्ने गर्दै हुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू।
And then the last thing I'll address is the property. So if you're detained or deported, you don't lose your property, but it may become really hard to really challenging to manage your property effectively. Like you might not be able to pay your property taxes on your house if you don't give that control to someone else. So it's a good idea to use a power of attorney to make sure that someone you trust is able to do things like pay your mortgage or, access your bank account. So these are things that you should take care of now if you have a final order of removal. And if you're already in detention or if a loved one is already in detention, then a family member who's outside should, get the power of attorney and bring it in and have you sign it. Because again, family is allowed to visit. So that's what can be done if you're already detained.
Thank you. Before that, let me tell these things. This is a number from Are Asian Refugee United. तपाईँ कसैलाई के क्वेसन आएको छ, तपाईँको कसैलाई पक्रिन आँटेको छ, पक्रेको छ, तपाईँ ओहायो र पेन्सिल्भेनियामा हुनुहुन्छ भने यो नम्बरमा कल गर्नु होला। यो एसियन रेफ्युजी युनाइटेड हाम्रो रबिन गुरुङ भाइ त्यहाँ काम गर्नुहुन्छ, त्यहाँको डिरेक्टर हुनुहुन्छ। यो नम्बरमा तपाईँले कल गरेर सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ र सबैजनालाई फेरि सेयर गर्न नभुलिदिनु होला है त। अब मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको थिएँ अर्को त्यस्तो भएको खण्डमा प्रपर्टीको चाहिँ के हुन्छ त है, मलाई मेरो नाममा घर छ, मेरो नाममा गाडी छ, मेरो नाममा विभिन्न कुराहरू छ, मलाई पक्रेर लग्यो भने त्यो हालतमा के हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा म भन्नुहुन्छ। तपाईँलाई डिटेन गरेर डिपोर्ट गरेको भए पनि तपाईँको सम्पत्तिलाई चाहिँ कुनै पनि समस्या हुँदैन टेक्निकल्ली कुरा गर्दा चाहिँ। तर त्यो प्रपर्टीलाई कसरी व्यवस्थापन गर्ने भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ बहुतै च्यालेन्जिङ अथवा अप्ठ्यारो अवस्थाको हुनसक्छ। त्यस कारणले हाम्रो आइडिया चाहिँ गुड आइडिया एटर्नीसँग बसेर गुड आइडिया टु युज अ पावर अफ एटर्नी टु मेक स्योर। त्यस कारणले पावर अफ एटर्नी कसैलाई मेरो सम्पत्ति छ, मेरो सम्पत्तिको हकदार चाहिँ कसैलाई दिन्छु भनेर जानुभन्दा त्यस्तो गरेको अवस्था छ भने अगाडि नै गर्नुभयो भने चाहिँ राम्रो हुन्छ। अब फाइनल रिमोभ अर्डर छ भने त डिटेन्सनको रिस्क छ भने अगाडि नै त्यो व्यवस्थापन गरेर अरू कसैलाई दियो भने त्यो घरको मोर्गेज तिर्ने, गाडीको मन्थली तिर्ने सबै कुरा अर्को मान्छेले गरिदिन सक्छ, होइन भने त्यस्तै पनि फेरि अर्को अप्ठ्यारोमा पार्न सक्छ भन्ने कुरा गर्नुभएको छ। Thank you. I have some questions here. Let me read some of the questions from the audience before I go to the other question. I have many questions. सबैजना कसले लेख्दै हुनुहुन्छ, तपाईँको सबै क्वेसन गर्न सकिनु कतिवटा क्वेसन सोध्छु। धेरैजनाले लेख्नु भएको छ, तपाईँलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद भन्दै चाहन्छु। र मेरो अर्को नेक्स्ट क्वेसन इज so Dilli Dhimal is asking, I have a friend who is green card holder and whose green card is expired but is still working, but he has a social security card and a driver's license. So my question is, what will happen if ICE catch him or detain him?
Oh, if ICE. I think a specific question like that, I think that person should talk to an attorney about their specific situation. But in general, if you're working and you don't have authorization, then that can pose problems for you. So I would recommend that person talk to an attorney as soon as possible, and figure out how they can get their work authorization renewed.
Thank you. I'll be asking another question in let's say one more question, then I'll go back to the next one. Uh, Chris Kasi Dulal is asking, what if the birthplace accept in front of the US government but driven out of the birth country? Where can he or she go? And how can he or she get help, or what can someone do? Basically, I think this question is pertain to us, like the king accepted us as a citizen, as a whatever it may be, in front of the US government. But
Mm-hmm.
within 24 hours, the king kicked us out.
Right.
So
Right.
he's asking what to do. That's what he's asking that question. I
Yeah.
think you answered that in the beginning.
Yes. So this sounds like sort of like the prior question. This is what's actually happening to um, the Bhutanese community right now, right? So what that means is that, yes, the Bhutan government has somehow said that they're accepting people from the United States that the United States wants to deport. They're giving them like a travel document or something that's what's needed to deport someone to Bhutan. And then, but it's all kind of fake, right? Because they're not allowed to stay in Bhutan, and instead they are expelled to a different country. And so if the question is, what can they do to get help? What can they do? Um, Once they're already in that situation, I do think the best thing to do is to contact an international human rights organization, or an international organization that is in Nepal or India, that can help them. But what can we do to prevent that from happening here? That's something that my organization and ARU and many others, especially ARU, is trying to figure out. And so, I can talk just a little bit, I guess, about some of the things that we think um, needs to happen. One thing that needs to happen is for us to find out more information about what exactly is going on, to lift that up for everyone to see, and to use that to show how unlawful this whole situation is. The other thing that we need to do for individuals who are in this situation but have not been deported yet is for them to be able to make some arguments about why they should not be deported to Bhutan, because it's not a real deportation to Bhutan. They're actually being just like shifted everywhere, and that really violates their due process. The fact that they don't have citizenship in Bhutan and are not accepted, and then are sent to all these other places where they also are not allowed to stay and be a full citizen and community member, means that they're stateless, and that could be a form of harm or torture, and they should say that. They should say that to the immigration agents. They should say that when they're picked up. They should say that when you know someone tells them that they're going to be put on this plane to Bhutan. And hopefully, their lawyers can, if they are able to get lawyers, can make this argument in front of an immigration judge.
थ्याङ्क यू दिल्लीराम हजुरले सोधेको क्वेसनको एन्सर लामो भयो। भुटानमा पुगेर नेपाल पुर्याइसकेका मान्छेहरूलाई चाहिँ भनेको कुरा हामीले अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय संस्थासँग कुराकानी गर्ने, भारतमा भएका नेपालमा भएका संस्थासँग कुरा गरेर उहाँहरूको हक र अधिकारको लागि कुरा गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुरो उहाँले बताउनु भयो भने, जो यहाँ छन् र यहाँ थुनिराखेको छ कतिजनालाई र कतिजनालाई थुन्न आँटेको अवस्थामा छ भने चाहिँ भुटान लाँदा मलाई डर लाग्छ भन्ने कुरा अघिको दोहोरिएको कुरा, त्यसलाई दोहोऱ्याउनु भयो भने अरू कुरा जुन आरु भने एसियन रेफ्युजी युनाइटेड हाम्रो रबिन गुरुङ भाइको अध्यक्षतामा काम गर्दैछ पेन्सिल्भेनियामा, र एसियन ल ककेस उहाँहरूले काम गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँहरू सङ्घ संस्थाहरू धेरैजनाले मिलेर चाहिँ आफ्नो एटर्नीसँग कुरा गरेर यो मामलालाई कसरी चाहिँ जागरुक अथवा यो मामलालाई कसरी फसेला गर्ने, मान्छेलाई लान नदिनका लागि कसरी व्यवस्थापन गर्ने भन्ने काम गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ भने आफूले पनि तपाईँले जो तपाईँलाई कसैलाई पक्रेको छ भने त्यो मान्छेले पनि त्यो इमिग्रेसन एजेन्ट जो हुन्छ उनीहरूलाई मलाई यस्तो यस्तो हुन्छ, यसरी मलाई डर लाग्छ भन्ने कुरालाई अगाडि राख्नु पर्यो भन्नुहुँदैछ। Thank you. We'll come to the audience question in a minute, but now I have a third question that I have prepared for you. What should I do if I have a removal order for a mistake that I did a long time ago that I already served my times for. I have been released and doing everything I am supposed to do, but I am scared that I will be detained by ICE. What should I do? What paperwork should I collect and get ready? Is there a number that I can call and get help from? Let me explain this question in Nepali. So these are the questions that I get a lot from the people in the community. मैले उहाँ भनेको थिएँ, उहाँको मलाई सोधेको प्रश्न चाहिँ के छ भने, म धेरैजनासँग सुनिरहन्छु, मलाई भनौँ कोही एउटा इक्जाम्पल दिएको छु, रिमुभल अर्डर भएको छ, देशबाट निकाला गर्ने भन्ने अर्डर आइसकेको छ। धेरै अगाडि मैले कुनै गल्ती गरेको कारणले, मानिनु आजभन्दा 8-10 वर्ष अगाडि गल्ती गरेको कारणले गर्दाखेरि त्यहाँबाट म जेल पनि बसेँ, जेलबाट मलाई छुट्टी पनि दियो र म अहिले समाजमा आएर आफ्नो काम गरिरहेको छु, काम गर्ने, बालबच्चा, आफ्ना छोराछोरी, बुढी बिहे गर्ने काम गरिरहेको छु। अब यस्तो अवस्थामा मलाई डर पनि लागिरहेको छ। अब मैले के गर्नु, कस्ता कस्ता खालका कागजपत्र मैले तयारी पार्नु, अथवा मैले के चाहिँ काम गर्न सक्नुपर्छ, के मैले कुनै कल गर्ने नम्बर छ भनेर मलाई सोध्नुहुन्छ, त्यो क्वेसन मैले उहाँलाई राखेको थिएँ। प्लिज गो हेड।
So yeah, this is a really sad part of our immigration system, that if you made a mistake a long time ago, that it could still cause you many years later, to be torn apart from your family. But unfortunately, that is our immigration system right now. If you have a final removal order due to a criminal conviction, the government can deport you because of the conviction, even if it's very old, even if you've been checking in with ICE for years. The way to fight this is by doing something called filing a motion to reopen. And that is a request for the immigration court to erase the deportation order because of new information. So the MTR is a really long and complicated process and is not possible for everyone. Not everyone will have new information that will allow them to reopen their case, but there are a lot of people that will. And it's important to find a lawyer to make this legal request, because you generally only have one chance to do so. It's possible to file this without a lawyer, but it's best to have one, because again, if you only have one chance, you want to make it your best shot. In most cases, a motion to reopen won't stop a deportation, but you can also file something called a motion for stay for removal, which pauses the deportation while waiting for a decision.
थ्याङ्क यू। पहिलो कुरा चाहिँ त्यस्तो कोही विगतमा गरेका गल्ती छन् हाम्रा भने यहाँको कानुन त्यस्तो खालको छ, जति अगाडि गरेको भए पनि त्यो गल्तीका कारणले गर्दा सजाय पाउने पाइरहन्छ। विडम्बना त्यही चाहिँ यहाँको नियम त्यस्तै खालको छ। र त्यसबाट कसरी गर्ने त भन्दा, अगर तपाईँको फाइनल रिमुभल अर्डर छ कुनै आपराधिक कार्यक्रममा क्रिमिनल कन्भिक्सनका कारणले गर्दा भने सरकारले तपाईँलाई डिपोर्ट गर्न सक्छ, आइसले तपाईँलाई गिरफ्तार गर्न सक्छ, रिमुभल अर्डर तपाईँको हातमा छ भने, अथवा तपाईँलाई दिएको छ भने। तर त्योबाट बाहिर जानको लागि के भन्दाखेरि एमटिआर भन्छ, मोसन टु रिओपन भनेर एमटिआर भन्ने छ, रिक्वेस्ट इमिग्रेसन कोर्टलाई गएर त्यो मोसन टु रिपोर्ट गर्ने। र तर त्यो चाहिँ गर्दा के हुन्छ भने एउटा मात्रै मौका हुन्छ, मान्छेको जिन्दगी एकै मात्रै पाइन्छ। र हो त्यो भनेको त्यो एमटिआर भन्ने चाहिँ एटर्नी अथवा लयरका साथमा गरेको राम्रो। आफै गर्दा पनि हुन्छ, तर लयरसँग गरेको चाहिँ म सल्लाह पनि दिन्छु। कारण किनभने त्यो एकै मात्रै पाउँछ, मान्छेले दुई खेप पाउँदैन। र कुनै कुरा एकै मात्रै पाइन्छ भने त्यसलाई आफूले सक्तो प्रयोग गर्नुपर्छ। र त्यस पछाडि म जजकोमा गएर जजले त्यो कुरालाई माने भने अनि एमटिआर गरिसके पछाडि त्यो मामला तपाईँको मासिन सक्छ। तर त्यो गर्दै गर्दा तपाईँलाई लाँदैन भन्ने होइन, फेरि त्यो भएको मामला लड्दै गर्दा लान पनि सक्ने अवस्था हुनसक्छ। तर त्यो भन्दै गर्दा चाहिँ उनीहरूले फेरि अर्को पनि मोसन फाइल गरेर त्यो हुन्जेलसम्म म बस्न पाउँछु भन्ने खालको अर्को पनि मामला गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा बताउनुहुँदैछ। Nice, go ahead.
Yes, so in order to start this process, this path to stay, even if you have a final removal order, you must have your documents. So you must have your immigration and criminal record documents. And this process takes at least a month in most cases. So it's really important to start that now. Given how quickly the deportations to Bhutan and Nepal and India have been happening, it's really hard to get your documents fast enough if you wait until you're already detained. So anyone of your listeners or their loved ones who have this final order of removal because of a criminal conviction, it's super, super important, like today, to request those documents, because no lawyer is going to be able to take your case, even if you have a case without them. So I can later. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let me because it's so
Sure.
important. अब त्यस्तो भएको खण्डमा अब एमटिआर मोसन टु रिओपन भनेर भनेको छ त्यो गर्नको लागि सबैभन्दा ठुलो कुरा के चाहियो भने कागजपत्र चाहियो है यो प्रोसेस चाहिँ सजिलो छैन छिटो छैन तर त्यस कारणले गर्दा इट इज एसेन्सियल टु रिक्वेस्ट युर इमिग्रेसन एन्ड क्रिमिनल रेकर्ड डकुमेन्ट्स तपाईँका के भएका छन् पहिले कागजपत्र सबै रेकर्डको डकुमेन्ट्सहरू चाहिँ तपाईँले भेला गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ त्यो गर्नलाई कमसेकम 1 महिना जस्तो लाग्न सक्छ कम्तीमा पनि सो तपाईँले त्यस्तो भएको रिमुभल अर्डर पाउनु भएको छ भने त्यो गर्ने काम चाहिँ आजै हो अहिलेदेखि गर्नु पर्यो त्यस्तो कोही हेर्ने साथीहरू त्यस्तो हुनुहुन्छ तपाईँलाई त्यस्तो भएको छ तपाईँको रिमुभल अर्डर छ भने तपाईँका कागजपत्र भेला गर्नु पर्यो भन्नुहुँदैछ प्लिज गो हेड
So definitely start that as soon as possible. And the other thing that you can do to prepare for this motion to reopen is to gather documents that would help you, such as your work history, letters of support from family, friends, or coworkers describing your positive sort of contributions and qualities and why you should stay in the US, educational documents, proof of sort of family ties to the US, like your children's birth certificates, medical records, any other records that show that you have made a big contribution to your community, and something to humanize you, like your photos of you and your family and things like that. So those are the two things that you can and should do now if you have a final order of removal. Get your immigration and criminal record documents and start collecting all that evidence of why you have so many ties to the US and how bad it would be for your community if you were uprooted and sent to another country.
Thank you. उहाँलाई फेरि त्यही दोहोऱ्याउनु हुँदैछ तपाईँ कसैलाई यो हेर्नु हुँदैछ भने फेरि नबिर्सिकन तपाईँले प्लिज सेयर गरिदिनु होला युट्युबमा गएर हेर्नु होला सब्स्क्राइब गर्नु होला भन्ने कुरा म भन्दैछु त्यस्तो भएको छ अवस्थामा चाहिँ तपाईँले कृपया तपाईँको क्रिमिनल रेकर्ड डकुमेन्ट्स क्रिमिनल रेकर्ड्स एन्ड इमिग्रेसन डकुमेन्ट्स दुईटा कागजपत्र भए र त्यसदेखि अतिरिक्तका तपाईँका कागजपत्र भनेको वर्क हिस्ट्री तपाईँले कहाँ काम गर्नुभयो W2 अनि लेटर अफ सपोर्ट परिवारका इष्टमित्र आफन्तले तपाईँलाई सपोर्ट यो मान्छेले राम्रो काम गर्थ्यो भन्ने खालका जो इष्टमित्रको हुन्छ अथवा कुनै अर्गनाइजेसनले दिएको हुन्छ संस्था त्यस्ता कागजपत्र भयो फ्यामिलीबाट भयो अरू कोवर्करले भयो कुनै साथी सहकर्मीले भयो यस्ता दिएका कागजपत्र अथवा तपाईँको मामलालाई यसरी बनाउनु पर्यो कि अगर तपाईँ समाजमा यति राम्रो काम गरिरहनु भएको छ गएको कति वर्षदेखि यता त्यहाँ त्यस्तो अप्ठ्यारो भएका आएदेखि र तपाईँलाई घरबाट निकालेर खेदाएको खण्डमा तपाईँको हालत के हुन्छ भनेर स्पष्ट पार्नका लागि चाहिँ कागजपत्र सबै तपाईँले तयार पार्नुपर्ने हुन्छ जहाँ कि तपाईँलाई गिरफ्तार गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि नै हो यो कुरा चाहिँ हामीले ख्याल गर्नुपर्छ भन्नुहुँदैछ Alright.
And just one last thing I'm going to add before you move on to the next question is, even though there's a possible pathway to stay by filing a motion to reopen, like I said, that's not necessarily a possibility for everyone. So it is good to be prepared. And even if you file it, you might not win it, So it is really important to make a plan now with your loved ones if you have a final order of removal to address the things we talked about, like childcare, finances, make sure that your records are all in one place. And there's some different laws for different states. So after this is over, I can put some guides in your chat, one for Ohio, one for Pennsylvania, that really help you look step by step what you can do if you're preparing for a potential detention or deportation.
फेरि उहाँले दोहोऱ्याउँदो रहेछ अर्को कुरा के छ भने अब डकुमेन्टेसन धेरैचोटि तपाईँले आफ्ना कागजपत्र भेला गर्नु पर्यो त्यो बहुत महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा उहाँले बताउनु भयो र अर्को कुरा उहाँले भनेको कुरा चाहिँ मामला अगाडि बढ्नका लागि मामला गर्नैका लागि पनि बहुत गाह्रो छ गर्न सकिन्छ तर गर्न जितिन्छ भन्ने पनि छैन तर त्यस्तो भएको खण्डमा विभिन्न किसिम कागजपत्र तयार पार्नुपर्ने हुन्छ र कागजपत्र तयार गरिसके पछाडि विभिन्न स्टेटका आफ्ना आफ्ना नियम छन् र अहिले उहाँले यो कार्यक्रम सकिसके पछाडि ओहायोको नियम के छ त्यो पनि लिङ्कमा लगाइदिनुहुन्छ पेन्सिल्भेनियामा लगाइदिनुहुन्छ र अरूतिर कहाँ गएर खोज्ने भने ती कुराकाहरूमा त उहाँले यहाँ लगाइदिनुहुन्छ त्यसमा हामीले गएर हेर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ थ्याङ्क यू So now let me get a couple of questions from audience because there are so many questions and there are some written in Nepali, some in English. So I'll interpret that into English. So one is Khem Raj Adhikari is asking, भिजिट भिसामा आएको मान्छे भिजिट भिसाको समय सकेपछि फेरि नेपाल फर्केर कति महिना बस्नुपर्छ 1 महिना नेपाल बसे हुन्छ कि 6 महिना बस्नुपर्छ कि 1 वर्ष बस्नुपर्छ? विषय वस्तुभन्दा बाहिरको प्रश्न भए पनि यति चाहिँ सोधिदिनु न भुवन सर. So Khemraj Adhikari is asking, though this is out of topic, can you please ask this question? Somebody who come to Nepal come to the US on a visit visa, and after going back, does that person need to stay in Nepal for a month or 6 months? What is the requirement? Is there any specific month that person should be staying in Nepal before coming back to the United States?
If they have, I'm sorry, they're a citizen of
Nepal.
Nepal, and they come to the US on a
Visit visa.
tourist visa. Is that right?
Yes, visit visa. Visit visa.
Okay, on a visit visa.
Maybe tourist. I don't know that part.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm not sure because that would depend on the laws in Nepal.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not sure about that.
All right. So Nepali citizen, we don't know how many months they need to stay back in Nepal before coming to the US, right? So Bhagirath, sorry, Khem Adhikari ji, उहाँले तपाईको प्रश्नको उत्तर दिन सक्नु भएन अहिले. So now again the next question from the Bhagirath Adhikari, according to the Refugee Immigration Act, a refugee cannot return unless their home country welcomes and protects them. In this instance, Bhutan is not friendly or safe for deportees. Should not this be the legal basis for taking this all the way to Supreme Court? Why would not an immigration attorney thoroughly study the case before making decision to deport refugees?
That's a really good question. And I guess I would say kind of a complicated one. So immigration judges, often find community members deportable based on things like a criminal conviction, and they'll list as the country of removal a country that they know they can't be deported to, which is why because they won't accept them. So that's what happened for Bhutanese folks, Bhutanese community members, as well as many other communities for a long time, which is why they were not deported immediately. And so and the reason they weren't deported immediately is because Bhutan was not accepting them. Just like for a long time, Cambodia didn't accept deportees, or Laos didn't accept deportees. And then what happened in the last Trump administration is that the US government started pressuring those countries, right, who wouldn't accept people, and said, like, you must accept deportees from the US. Otherwise, I won't let your high-level officials come into the US, like that kind of pressure. And so that kind of pressure resulted in countries like Cambodia opening up to accepting deportees. Anyways, we don't exactly know what happened with Bhutan, what kind of pressure or anything occurred in this situation. And you're right that people shouldn't be deported to an unsafe place, which is why we're recommending that anyone who is in detention or deportation state that very clearly to everyone. But these removal orders are old. It's not, they were made, the immigration judge decided them before they knew that Bhutan would start accepting people, even though they're not even really accepting people. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. उहाँले भन्नुहुँदैछ इमिग्रेसन जजले जति बेला म छोटो पारेर भन्छु, जजले जति बेला निर्णय गरे यी भुटानको कुरा हालत नबुझिकन हो, कतिवटा कुरा योभन्दा अगाडि कहिले पनि रेफ्युजीलाई फर्काइँदैन थियो, जस्तो क्याम्बोडियाको पनि कुरा त्यही थियो, तर उहाँ चाहिँ प्रेसर भयो क्याम्बोडियामा कतिवटा लाओसियन कन्ट्रीमा नलानेलाई मान्छेले लान थाले। अहिले ट्रम्प एडमिनिस्ट्रेसनले दबाब दिएका कारणले भुटानमा के भयो हामीलाई त कुरा थाहा छैन, तर यी इमिग्रेसन अर्डर, यो जुन चाहिँ अर्डर डिपोर्टेसनको अर्डर हो, अगाडि नै भएको हो, जति बेला भुटान लाँदैन थियो र इमिग्रेसन जजलाई पनि यो कुरा थाहा थिएन नि होला भन्ने कुरा गर्नुहुँदैछ। र हामी अर्को क्वेसनमा जाउँ। वी आर अलमोस्ट एन आवर, सो आई हेभ अ नेक्स्ट क्वेसन फर यु। आइल बी टेकिङ सम अफ द क्वेसन फ्रम अडियन्स। र तपाईँ अडियन्सहरू, तपाईँ जो हेर्नुहुन्छ, तपाईँ प्लिज कन्टिन्यू पुट युर क्वेसन्स इन द च्याट द्याट मे हेल्प अदर पिपल हु क्यानट, इभन इफ इट्स नट युर क्वेसन, प्लिज आस्क सो द्याट it will be helpful for other people in the audience those who cannot write, those who cannot ask those questions. तपाईँलाई भन्छु तपाईँको क्वेसन तपाईँकै नभए पनि तपाईँले उत्तर जानेकै भए पनि तपाईँले राखिदिनु भयो भने अरू मान्छेहरूलाई फाइदा हुन्छ र तपाईँलाई सबै फेरि पनि सेयर गर्न नभुल्नु होला सबैले सेयर गरिदिउँ धेरैभन्दा धेरै साथीहरूकोमा पुगोस् भन्ने मेरो आशा हो राइट नेक्स्ट क्वेसन इज how do I protect myself and my loved ones from immigration enforcement? So this one is quite a crazy question, Nicole. Let me give you a scenario that happened so that all my audience also will be aware of from this particular question. And this happened. I'm not bringing any fear to any audience, but it's a real thing. I'm bringing this one just to make all of us aware. म तपाईँ कसैलाई डर देखाउनको लागि क्वेसन सोधेको अनि यो भएको कुरा सोधेको तपाईँ मैले मेरो क्वेसनलाई नडराउनु होला चिन्ता नगर्नु होला सो म यो क्वेसन सोध्दैछु सो निकोल दिस भेरी do I say scary or not? I'm concerned. I don't know, but I'm scared. So मलाई डर नै लाग्छ साँच्चै कुरा हो one citizen, a US citizen, naturalized citizen, well-educated, college-educated US naturalized citizen who never even had a speeding ticket, went to a BMB, a driver's license place, to renew his driver's license. And he was there in BMB, he was doing all the work, took a picture, photograph, whatever, whatnot, he just paid. After that, DMB officials came and told that your natural license certificate looks fake to me. And with that said, they took his natural license certificate. It's almost a month and maybe a few more days. He has not got back. The whole reason that his certificate was taken is that it looked fake to the employees of the BMB. So is that because for us, former refugees, we were citizens of Bhutan, the king removed us from the country because we did not look like him. That's the only reason. The king threw out of the country because we look different from him. That's the one of the reasons. Okay. We were in Nepal. We did not have our citizenship. Now we are in the United States. The most important and the only important document with us is the natural license certificate. And an employee of BNB can take away that. How painful and how sad situation is that?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. How do I protect myself and my loved ones from immigration enforcement? So that particular individual was so scared that he was telling, will I be deported? That was his question to me. And I really, I don't know how to answer. But let me ask this in Nepali as well. मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको थिएँ म चिन्तित छु म डराएको पनि छु मैले तपाईँलाई डर देखाउन खोजेको होइन एकजना कोही भाइ थिए 30-32 वर्षको भाइ जो चाहिँ अमेरिकामा आएर नेचुरलाइज भइसकेको नागरिक भइसकेको मान्छे कलेज एजुकेटेड मान्छे उनको गाडी कुदाउँदा स्पिडिङ टिकट पनि नपाएको मान्छे यहाँ ड्राइभर लाइसेन्स बनाउन भनेर जाँदाखेरि उहाँको सर्टिफिकेट नेचुरलाइज सर्टिफिकेटलाई चाहिँ तेरो हेर्दा चाहिँ अलिकति नक्कली जस्तो देख्यो भने यतिकै राख्दैछ हामी त यस्तो खालको मान्छे हौँ भुटानको दुष्ट राजाले हामीलाई त्यहाँ हामी ऊभन्दा भिन्नै देखियो कारणले हामीलाई त्यहाँबाट जरा उखेलेर खेदायो हामी शिविरमा आएर बस्यौँ त्यहाँ पनि हामीलाई 18-20 वर्ष बस्दा पनि नागरिक भएन अहिले यहाँ छौँ हामीसँग भएको सबैभन्दा महत्त्वपूर्ण कागज भनेकै त्यही एउटा नागरिक हो त्यो पनि नाथे एउटा डिएमबीमा काम गर्ने मान्छेलाई खोसेर लान्छ भने कति हदसम्मको विडम्बना हो हाम्रो भनेर मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको छु र उहाँले यसको बारेमा के भन्नुहुन्छ प्लिज गो हेड
So yeah, that situation is really outrageous. And one thing I just want to emphasize is that even though the BMV took away the certificate, that does not affect that individual's status. The BMV does not have power to take away someone's citizenship, even if they, take hold of the paper. So I just want to make that clear. What we talked about earlier about denaturalization, that's the only way that you can take away someone's citizenship, is if you go through that process that requires a court to say that you are no longer a citizen. I know that's really scary and it's really wrong that they did that. And I hope that there's some attorneys involved who are advocating for this individual. But that individual status as a citizen of the United States is not affected at all by the fact that the paper was taken.
उहाँले भन्नुहुन्छ यो अवस्थामा बिएमबीको मान्छेले कागजपत्र लानु नहुने हो लगेको भए पनि त्यो मान्छेको नागरिकको लागि कुनै असर पर्दैन तर विडम्बनाको हो नलानु पर्ने थियो तर नेचुरलाइजेसन आफ्नो नागरिकता खोसिने भनेको एउटै मात्रै हो, डिनेचुरलाइजेसन प्रोसेसबाट मात्रै हो। त्यस्तो हुँदा DMV को मान्छेले दुर्भाग्यको काम गरे, तर त्यस्तो केही समस्या नहुनु पर्ने हो भन्नुहुँदैछ। अलराइट। So how do I protect myself and my loved ones from the immigration enforcement?
Okay, so in general, in terms of immigration enforcement, you should be keeping copies of documents. I guess again, copies, so that just in case someone takes something from you, you have the original at home, that show your legal status with you at all times. So maybe that's a green card, maybe that's a passport. And if you don't have legal status, but you applied for status, then you should carry some copies that showed you applied for that status. And even if you are not applying for status, you don't have status, the best thing you can do then is to keep with you documents that showed that you lived in the United States for 2 years, because that gives you due process protections. That gives you more rights if you are arrested and detained before the government can deport you. So those are things like if you have a state or local ID that was issued within the last 2 years, or things like that show that you've lived here, or something with your address on it from 2 years ago, like your rent agreement. So things like that, whatever status you have, keep with you, keep close to you those documents just in case you're stopped. I'll pause there.
थ्याङ्क यू। मैले उहाँलाई सोधेँ के कसरी गर्ने त भन्दा सबैभन्दा पहिलो प्रश्नको जवाब अघिदेखि हामीले भनिरहेका छौँ, आफ्नै कागजपत्रको कपी बनाउने, ग्रिन कार्ड होस् जुनै पनि कागजपत्र कपी बनाएर राख्ने। कपीको अर्थ के हो भने अरिजिनल अन्त्य राखेर केही भइहाल्यो तपाईँलाई कसैले लगिहाल्यो भने अरिजिनल त टुङ्गामा छ नि त भन्नका लागि कपी बनाएर कपी धेरै धेरै राख्ने भन्ने कुराकानी गर्नुभयो। र यिनै अब अथवा तपाईँ अमेरिका आउनुभएको छ 2 वर्ष भएको छ, 2 वर्ष अगाडिदेखिको कागजपत्र के छ, ती कागजपत्रले पनि तपाईँलाई धेरै सहायता पुग्छ। कारण किन ड्यू प्रोसेस भनेको 2 वर्ष भइसके पछाडि, यहाँ बसेको 2 वर्ष भए पछाडि चाहिँ तपाईँले पाउने अधिकार धेरै हुन्छन्, जुन अधिकारको हदमा चाहिँ आफूले काम गर्न सकिन्छ, अधिकारको आधारमा चाहिँ काम गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा गर्छ। अलराइट, प्लिज गो हेड।
So if you have all of these you keep all these documents and you are stopped, remember to show them. And also remember that you don't have to talk to any immigration or law enforcement official. You can remain silent. You have that right. And in fact, you probably should remain silent until you have an attorney present, just in case you say something or they misconstrue something that you say. So also remember that you can also ask them if you're free to leave. And if they say yes, then you should leave.
अब सबैभन्दा हामीले जान्नुपर्ने कुरा, यो विशेष गरेर बुटनिस साथीहरूलाई म भन्छु, तपाईँलाई कोही बेला आइसले इमिग्रेसन अफिसर्सले तपाईँलाई पक्रिएको खण्डमा तपाईँलाई केही सोध्यो भने तपाईँले नबोल्न पाउनुहुन्छ। तपाईँको नबोल्नु तपाईँको अधिकार हो, यो कुरा ख्याल गर्नु पर्यो। कारण बोलिहाल्यो भने तपाईँले कोही बेला उल्टोपाल्टा बोलियो भने तपाईँको विरुद्धमा त्यो प्रयोग हुनसक्छ, अथवा तपाईँले बोलेको कुरा उल्टापाल्टा बुझ्यो भने त्यहाँ अरू उल्टा कानुन लाग्न सक्ने सम्भावना हुन्छ। नबोल्नु तपाईँको अधिकार हो। जबसम्म तपाईँसँग आफ्नो वकिल हुँदैन, वकिल नहुन्जेलसम्म नबोल्ने पनि तपाईँको अधिकार, ती कुरामा तपाईँले ख्याल गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। थ्याङ्क यू।
And then the last thing I just want to point out is that if immigration comes to your door, if you're at home, and I think this happened, unfortunately, to some of the Bhutanese community, right? If you're at home and then someone comes knocking, I want to give you some advice on what to do. So first, don't open the door unless they show you what's called a judicial warrant. It has to be signed by a judge, not an immigration judge, but an actual judge. So if they knock, you should ask, are you from immigration and why are you there? And you should tell them that they cannot come in unless they show you that warrant. Now, if they say they have one, tell them to slide it under the door so you can read it. And again, an actual judicial warrant has the name of a court. It's signed by a judge. If it says something like Department of Homeland Security, that's not a judicial warrant and you don't have to open the door. So just keep that in mind to protect yourself and your family from unwarranted entry by immigration enforcement.
अर्को कुरा, हामीले यो आफ्नो घरमा नपर्नेसम्म चाल पाइदैन, तपाईलाई भोलि पर्न सक्छ, त्यसकारण सबैले ख्याल गर्नु पर्ला। हाम्रो कसै हाम्रो भुटानी घरमा यो भइसकेको छ अस्ति नै, तपाईकोमा कोही इमिग्रेसन को वारेन्ट बोकेर आए घरमा कुनै इमिग्रेसन इन्फोर्समेन्ट मान्छे आयो भने तपाईँलाई उनीहरूले जजले साइन गरेको यहाँको इमिग्रेसन जज होइन तर जुन चाहिँ यहाँको अमेरिकाको डिओजेको जजले साइन गरेको चाहिँ सरी इमिग्रेसन एक्चुअली जजले साइन गरेको कोर्टको जजले साइन गरेको कागज छ भने मात्रै त्यो वारेन्टलाई तपाईँले उनीहरूले दैलो खोलेर पस्न सक्छन् होइन भने तपाईँले दैलो नखोल्न पाउनुहुन्छ तपाईँको अधिकार रहन्छ उनीहरूलाई सोध्ने उनीहरूलाई देखाउन लाउने कस्तो हुन्छ वारेन्ट पहिले हेर्ने माथिबाट तल जजले साइन गरेको लेखेको छ भने मात्रै दैलो खोलेर भित्र पस्दैन नभए उहाँहरूलाई पस्न नदिन सक्नुहुन्छ त तपाईँको अधिकारभित्र रहन्छ भन्नुहुँदैछ थ्याङ्क यू so now I have a few questions still. We already crossed our 1 hour time limit. Let me ask one question from audience, then we'll go for our question now. What type of cases does ICE deport? Is DUI case too? DUI and DUI. Maybe I don't know what DUI means. So let's not take that one. Why don't US pressure Bhutan government to take their people?
Yeah, why doesn't the US pressure the Bhutan government to actually accept Bhutanese community members and allow them to be full citizens in Bhutan? I mean, I guess I don't actually know the answer to that. But I think what we can see from how the US government is, treating other community members from other countries, like how they're sending a lot of people to El Salvador to be in a prison there, even if they never set foot in El Salvador, that they don't actually care that much about the people that are getting deported. And so I think for the US, they are just using the fact that they have a travel document from Bhutan to deport people, even though it's very, very wrong. And I'm not sure, I can't speak, I guess, for the government because I'm not part of it.
All right, thank you. Let me ask that now the next question, which is so important, which I also learned recently through the news media, and I put this question to you. Let me read this question. In the meantime, let me ask my audience to share. Please share these things. Put your comment and make sure you subscribe and watch in a YouTube rather than a Facebook, because this Facebook will be removed in a month, but YouTube video will remain forever. So for a long time, please, for our audience, make sure you subscribe and do that one. So the next question is, it's a very long question. I'll do both in English and Nepali. What a new immigration registry is? What the new immigration registry is? Who is required to register and why? Legal risks for non-compliance, fines, detention, and possible criminal charges. Step to protect yourself. What undocumented individuals and families should do now. Impact on immigrant communities. How is the policy? How this policy would increase surveillance, fear, and marginalization. So let me translate this. I don't know how I cannot translate this thing clearly, but I'll try to do this thing. यो अमेरिकामा अहिले भर्खरै न्यू इमिग्रेसन रेजिस्ट्री भनेको छ, जुन चाहिँ बाहिरबाट इमिग्रेन्टहरूले रेजिस्टर गर्नुपर्छ सबैले भन्ने खालको नियम छ। यो के हो र कसले रेजिस्टर गर्नुपर्छ भनेर मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको छु। अनि यो नगर्दा हुन सक्ने के हुन्छ, फाइन, डिटेन्सन, यसो हुन सक्ने सम्भाव्य अप्ठ्याराहरू कस्ता कस्ता हुन्। अनि अनडकुमेन्ट जस्तो कागजपत्र नभएका मान्छेहरूले के गर्नुपर्छ। अनि यस्ता खालका पोलिसीले सर्भिलेन्स भने हामीलाई निगरानी गर्ने, अरू कतिवटा समाजमा डर देखाउने, त्रास देखाउने, यस्ता कुरामा कस्तो कस्तो असर पर्छ भन्ने प्रश्न मैले उहाँलाई सोधेको थिएँ। उहाँले भन्नुहुँदैछ। Alright, I think this is the last question, Nicole. Okay.
So this new registration requirement that you're talking about is really complicated and it is really scary. It presents a lot of risks. If you do it, if you don't do it. So later I'll send you, or we can put in the chat, some general guidance that our partners like the National Immigration Law Center have put out that I think will be really helpful. But the bottom line is that you should really, really speak to a qualified immigration attorney about your specific situation before submitting any information on this registry.
Okay. All right, thank you, Nicole. So thank you so much for this one. I think you'll put this documentation in the chat afterwards. So because we already crossed our 1 hour time. So हेर्ने सबै साथीहरू तपाईँलाई विशेष विशेष धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। उहाँको समय सकिसकेको छ र तपाईँले जसलाई आफ्नो यस्तो क्वेसन छ तपाईँको घरमा कोही इष्टमित्र दाजुभाइ दिदीबहिनीलाई कसैलाई यस्तो परेको छ भने कृपया तपाईँले यो नम्बरमा कल गर्नुहोला र यो भिडियोलाई हेर्नुहोला। अरू सबै साथीहरूकामा यो पठाइदिनु होला र सकेसम्म यसलाई सेयर गर्नुहोला। र तपाईँलाई फेरि पनि भन्छु फेसबुकमा हेर्नु चाहिँ फलो गर्नु होला, युट्युबमा गएर सब्सक्राइब गर्नु होला। मेरो आज 500जना मान्छे पुर्याउनु पर्ने 400 मान्छे मात्रै छौँ र तपाईँ आफूले युट्युबमा सब्सक्राइब गर्न जान्नुहुन्न भने साथीभाइलाई सोधेर प्लिज सब्सक्राइब गरिदिनु होला। हामी मेरो भिडियो हेर्ने हजारौँ हुनुहुन्छ तर सब्सक्राइब गर्ने कम्ती छौँ। तपाईँ सबैले सब्सक्राइब गरिदिनु भयो भने सब्सक्रिप्सन माथि पुग्छ भन्दै thank you, Nicole, for coming. And this is so important information that you are sharing with the members of our community. I think in the future, we'll again do one more time so that we can answer remaining questions as well. Do you want to add anything else as we're ending these things?
No, I just want to thank you so much. And I know that the what's happening right now is so wrong. So I just really want to encourage you to contact your Congress members to amplify the stories and voices of your community that is being impacted by these really harmful policies. And follow Aru on social media. And they're really leading a lot of the work to respond to these threats and also have a legal and mutual aid fund to provide support for impacted families. So I just wanted to share those opportunities to do something.
All right, then. Thank you.